Hey, deserving listeners, The Ultimatum. Let's watch.
Don't start moving hands quickly, slapping shit. I'm pissing you off? Really? I'm pissing you off because, like, you're triggering something inside of me and I'm trying to tell you.
Okay, I'm confused. He seems to be upset about something and she's, I don't know. Let's rewind this. Do you want more than one grilled cheese at 1:15 a.m. in the morning? Do you want more than one grilled cheese?
Don't start.
She says no. Then he says, don't start moving your hands quickly, slapping shit. Okay, so she's gesturing with her hands. And we can't guarantee that this visual is actually coinciding with the audio. I can't determine if it's actually synced up. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't the same scene.
Moving hands quickly, slapping shit. I'm pissing you off? Really? I'm pissing you off because, like, you're triggering.
And then he asks in a sarcastic way, well, I'm pissing you off, really? Because I said something, you're triggering something inside of me and I'm trying to tell you. Okay, so something about her hands.
Something inside of me and I'm trying to tell you.
How am I supposed to read your mind? I can't tiptoe around you, Jay.
Oh, okay.
Because
So then we skip forward 15 minutes and it's a continuation of their fight. So lots of things were probably said and we don't know what those were. And then she's saying that she has to tiptoe around him and she's like, because I tapped my nails on the counter, that triggered you. So yeah, I mean, given what we saw from Ryann and James, we could imagine that there is a dynamic between them where James will get angry and she will have to walk on eggshells. Who knows? But we could see that, right?
I tapped my nails on the counter, that triggered you.
Why won't you let me talk? Why won't you let me finish the fucking sentence? God damn. Like, yeah, it'll be nice finishing my sentence with you in there.
Okay, then he says, how come you won't let me finish my sentence? Maybe that's true. Maybe it's just one of those Mildred-y kind of things. And then she stonewalls and walks off, maybe as a way of trying to, take a break so that they won't fight anymore, or she's done with the relationship, or she's done with him, or, maybe the trial marriage opened up her mind in terms of like, wow, I was used to this walking on eggshells around you, but now in contrast, I don't want to live like that anymore.
So I saw this. This is what I saw.
Okay, so he's demonstrating. He's saying, I saw this, and it wasn't hard necessarily. So he's trying to explain to her what made him angry. This is over a long span of time, so maybe there's details in there that would be more convincing to us, but the way it looks is that James got upset about nothing. It's okay, but how do you deliver it, right? You could say like, so what you're doing with your hands right now, it's fine, but it triggers me because it gets in my space, and I'm sorry about that, but could you not do that? That's one way. Another way is by jumping down, someone's throat and saying, knock it off. Well, or the first question you asked, like, do you want my grilled cheese? I think maybe, I don't know. But it seemed like the overall effect was him escalating in anger and hostility and her walking on eggshells normally and going, oh, I'm sorry. We could see her being that way, but now she's fed up with it. She doesn't want to be that way.
It wasn't hard, necessarily. There was fast things in my face, and it reminded me a lot of how my mom communicates when she's mad.
Okay. Good, James. Now, followed up with, you didn't do anything wrong. I should have said it differently. But that's why it triggers me, and it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me and what I went through with my mom. It's great that he said that, but then what does he say? Because a half measure down the road of health is he says this, but then he says, and therefore you're a jerk face because you did what my mom did when she was just being a human being.
And I don't like when shit comes in my face at all.
And I also want to appreciate what he's saying right now. I mean, he's said a number of things about how difficult his childhood was and how there are things about his childhood that he hasn't told anyone about. And so he's saying now that when my mom would get upset and angry and maybe scary and abusive, she would, use her hands a lot and maybe even literally hit him. And he doesn't want to say that directly because he has a hard time admitting it to himself or something, who knows. But imagine the amount of trauma that you'd have to go through to have a very soft, safe partner like Ryann who's talking using her hands, and to have that be a trigger. You could imagine that happening, right? And just imagine what he's been through, because it wouldn't just be that. There's probably like 100 different things that remind him of the traumas that he's been through. It doesn't justify his hostility. So let's see how he follows this up.
And I don't like when shit comes in my face at all. I don't like seeing it out.
And I don't like someone breaking a metal glass in front of my.
And then she says, and I don't like someone breaking a metal glass in front of my face. So I think she's saying that that's what James did. Did he do that on camera and they didn't show it? Or she's talking about another incident? Kind of sounds like she's saying that's what he did tonight.
Face.
And you telling me that I can't use my emotional trauma as like a reason to have PTSD?
At some point, you have to move on.
But that's for me to decide when that happens, not for you.
Neither one of you can decide, James. It's not a choice. It's not that you can just wake up and say, I decide to move on. It's a recovery process. So, okay, well, I imagine that if he, as a pattern, because I'm sure this isn't the first time this has happened, is not hostile or makes up for the hostility later on better, to say like, I'm so sorry that I snapped at you, I got triggered. I've worked with so many people with this, couples, individuals, who have these kinds of reactivities. It's a huge part. In fact, I would say that to some degree, every couple I work with, it's useful to figure this out. What is the trauma? What's the reactivity? What's the defense? And how do you misunderstand each other when you accidentally trigger your partner in some way and they come back at you with a defense that seems very hostile and off-putting and rejecting and awful? It's a miscommunication of them trying to alert you that you scared them and that you hurt them. And you don't understand why they would be scared or hurt because you don't have the traumas that they have. That's a huge part of having a good marriage, is understanding each other's traumas. Everyone has some traumas along these lines, some trigger, some schema that of some degree, no matter how healthy you are. Of course, a lot of people have, some pretty severe ones. So it'd be okay if he's in the direction of health. He could be a lot less healthy in this moment. But I bet you that he's been overly hostile and blaming and not apologizing enough and not letting her off the hook. Continuing to blame her the way I was saying earlier. She doesn't have a firm grasp on trauma because she hasn't been through it, and thinks that he's holding on to the past. A lot of people will think that. And, I'll talk. If I had a couple like this, I would have a lot of work with him, but I'd also be working with her about helping her to understand the condition of trauma and that this isn't going away and there's no way that he can wish it away.
And you get to decide whether.
It does, because it changed my life. It affects my life.
Okay.
When you're telling me how I can and can't talk.
Ryan, we came here to figure out our shit. I want to feel like I can talk to you about anything.
I'm feeling so much of myself. I can't do it.
Yeah. And you just imagine her leaving and trying to go to bed and I just don't want to deal with this anymore. And he's like, it feels like he's following her around. And yeah, I imagine that she has been through a lot. And yeah, I mean, even if he does have a pretty healthy approach with the trauma, and she was saying earlier, it's like it affects my life, and yeah, it sucks for people with schemas and traumas around these sorts of things. It will harm their partners. And is it a deal breaker? Because she's not his therapist and she's not his mom, so she could decide. And I've worked with people who have made that choice. It's hard. It's like, I know my partner has been through a lot, and I see why they are so difficult to be with as a partner. And I don't blame them because of what they went through. And they've changed a lot. My partner has really healed. They've been through a lot of therapy, but they're still really hard. You know, they still get triggered so often. It's just such a grind. It's such a struggle. You know, frequently, we can never just have a few weeks where, you know, they don't get triggered. And I feel bad because I know it's not their fault, but I don't want to deal with this anymore. I want to just relax and be with someone where it's not that, you know, you don't wish that would happen to people, but it does. You know, another similar thing, it's really unfortunate, especially if you are one of those individuals who gets triggered a lot and needs a partner to accommodate that. You know, sometimes it's too much for some people, particularly if you have James, his approach, where I think he's just kind of unrelenting and he doesn't really know what's happening like, imagine if he were just to go to her and say, okay, right now, the reason why I keep hounding you about this is because I love you so much and I feel like I screwed up and I feel ashamed of myself and I feel like I'm a broken person, and I guess I'm just asking you to be okay with that. And I'm sorry, and I still kind of believe that I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm pretty sure that I did. And so I'm looking for an indication that you're not going to wake up in the morning and leave me because I'm panicking on this. You know, if you said something like that, like maybe it'd go better, but he's not. I don't hear him doing that. He is, you know, just saying like, it's more blaming, but it's less so. He's saying, you know, I have traumas. How come you can't deal with that? That kind of thing. Because he's hoping, I think, and I don't even think he necessarily knows what he's hoping for really deep down. And for her, it's just like this more hostility and more blaming of me. And I'm trying to deal with it, but I've been through this before. So just let me go to sleep.
I need more than I can get sometimes.
Well, Ryan, you were quite obviously super capable of giving it to Trey.
This conversation is nowhere. We keep going back and forth. We went back and forth for hours. What time is it? It's 3 o'clock. So we went back and forth for 2 or more hours.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's terrified to go to bed with this distance, especially given, I think, her new assertiveness and given the fact that her and Trey seem to have a connection and that, you know, really tweaks him, because that would tweak just about anybody. And he doesn't know how to bid for, like, and also maybe doesn't know how to soothe himself. You know, there's a point in these kind of scenarios where if you are James, it would be helpful if you could say, okay, what's happening? I guess I'm afraid that she's going to leave me because of Trey and this whole process, and because I keep getting triggered, and she seems to be at her wit's end. And I keep trying to plead with her, but it doesn't seem to be working. And I just have to accept that maybe she will leave me in the morning. Maybe she won't, but maybe she will. And I'll be okay. And she'll be okay. It's horrible to think about, but, you know, if that's where this is headed, then that's where it's headed. And I don't invite that. I don't want it, but I'll live. And I'm okay. And I trust that my life will work out somehow. Like, being able to say that to yourself. But if you're abused, you don't necessarily have those inner voices, because the fact that I have that voice in my heart that I can tell myself is because from 0 to 18, my parents and other people were saying those things to me. When I was 4 and having a meltdown, my parents were there telling me or showing me that everything's going to be okay and that it's okay that I'm upset, you know? Those voices and experiences become internalized, and then there's an internal object, an interject that I call upon when I need to as an adult. But if you don't have that inside of you, or it's not very robust, especially if you have negative interjects that say that you're a horrible person and no one's going to love you, then it's really hard to soothe yourself. And so you need the other person to soothe you in this moment. But when you are the one that's aggravating them all night long, it's hard for Ryann to soothe him in any kind of authentic way.
Nothing has changed. Nothing. You can't admit when you're wrong, and it's exhausting
Okay.
to try to prove to people
Okay.
that you're being an asshole.
Wow, these bedroom cameras are just a thing because it's so real, right? I didn't show this, but they showed Antonio and Roxanne having sex. It was obvious. Like, so you remember with Queer Love, I was like, do they show this? And I feel like they didn't before. So apparently they just have I will say there's less of it in this season than in Queer Love, whether that's notable or not. You know, I talked about that for a while. But anyway, seeing, who knows what but we can imagine what was going on there. He's desperate. It's like, I'm sorry. And he's, you know, and she's turning away. Who knows? Maybe she hugged him and kissed him before that, and they're just spooning. But there's also a chance that he was engulfing her against her consent. I mean, not in that way, but just like, she's just like, can I just go to bed? Because I think what did it say, like 3 or 4 in the morning, and the fight started at 1 in the morning. Yeah. And this probably isn't an isolated event for them. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.